Hi, it's Heather from Thicketworks, and today we're going to build this miniature trestle table and benches in 1/12 scale. These miniatures look as though they're created from wood, but they're cut on the Cricut Maker from 22-point lightweight chipboard, and then laminated together and hardened with superglue. If you would like to make your own miniature trestle table and benches, I hope that you'll visit the Thicketworks blog post where you can download a free copy of the SVG Bundle, and once you've cut it, these are the pieces that you'll have to work with. The tabletop, which consists of 3 layers plus planking, a stretcher, and a beam that goes under the tabletop, ornamental supports, and additional layers of ornamentation. The benches consist of 3 layers each along with planking, 2 supports each, 1 beam that supports each bench top, and then a set of stretchers for each bench for a total of 4. You can begin this simple project wherever you would like. I'm going to start with the bench tops. 3 layers with construction slots are laminated together. I chose to use Uhu adhesive for this operation. A brayer is used to make certain that everything is extremely well bonded. Next, the planking is added on the upper surface of the bench top. First one outer edge, and then the other. This makes lining up the central plank a lot easier. Just a thin bead of glue down the middle of each plank will do the job. Repeat this for the other bench top. At the end of the process, you'll have 2 bench tops that look like this. Now I'll follow the exact same procedure for the tabletop. I'm laminating together the 3 tabletop pieces that have construction slots. And then I'm adding the planking beginning at the outer edges, then placing the central plank, and finally the 2 flanking planks on either side. Adding the planks in this way makes it easier to adjust the spacing between each of the planks. Next, I'm going to work on these stretchers that are sized to fit each of the benches. They consist of 4 layers of chipboard. Here I'm using Zig 2-way glue to laminate all 4 layers together. And I'll create 2 of these spacers for each of the benches. A pair of fine-tipped tweezers really helps to align all of the pieces. In total, we will have 4 of these at the end of the process. Next, I'm going to laminate together the beams that help support each of the bench tops. These also consist of 4 layers of chipboard, carefully aligned so that the construction tabs will fit neatly into the construction slots on the bottom of each bench top. In total, we'll have 2 of these pieces at the end of this process. Now I'm repeating the same process for the beam that helps support the top of the table, taking care to make certain that the construction tabs align properly. And now I'm working on the stretcher for the table. It's 4 layers of chipboard laminated together. And at the end of the process, we have these 2 pieces. Now, I'm going to begin working on the ornamental supports for the table. Each support is constructed from 4 layers of 22-point chipboard. The chipboard that I use is slightly thinner than say, cereal box weight chipboard, but it's also more dense in consistency. So once it's been laminated together, and especially after it's been hardened with superglue, it creates a very sturdy, solid, wood-like substance. I choose to work in this way rather than attempting to cut designs like this from thicker material, because the Cricut Maker can cut very intricate shapes from this lightweight chipboard. If I were attempting to cut everything from, say, mat board, it wouldn't be possible to achieve this level of intricacy. So that's why I choose to cut multiples and laminate and harden the layers, rather than attempting to cut a single layer of a thicker material. The chipboard that I use is relatively inexpensive, and it's readily available via Amazon US. I get it in packages of 200 sheets at a time. Once all of the pieces have been laminated together for the benches, you'll end up with 2 bench tops, 2 under the bench top beams, and 4 stretcher supports. The beams fit into the bottom of each of the bench tops like this, and the stretchers fit into the construction slots on each of the ornamental supports. The upper edge of the supports contains a slot that will allow you to fit the beam into it so that the whole piece becomes stable. Now I'm going to add some decorative stabilizing pieces onto the bottom of each of the table supports. I add 2 layers on either side of each of the ornamental supports. Now it's time for a dry fit. I place the stretcher and then the upper beam between the ornamental supports for the table and verify that the tabletop will rest perfectly on top. Now that all of the components have been constructed, it's time to harden all of them using Starbond thin superglue. I use the thinnest superglue that I can find, and the reason for that is that I need it to actually penetrate into the fibers of the chipboard. If I were using a thicker type of glue, it wouldn't wick into the surface of the material the way that I need it to. But the super thin variety soaks into the material using capillary action. I'm so grateful that I located this precision metal tipped applicator bottle. It makes my life so much easier, and I go through a lot less superglue than I did before I had access to this handy tool. Now, one question that I get on a regular basis is regarding whether or not the precision tip on this bottle clogs. And the answer is yes, it does clog, but it's very easy to remove the clog, although it is a procedure that I recommend that you use with the utmost caution. To clear the clog on the end of the metal tip, expose the tip to an open flame very briefly, and under circumstances where you have adequate ventilation, of course, to burn off the solidified cyanoacrylate adhesive that is causing the clog. It's a very simple procedure, but one that you must exercise extreme caution when performing. Nevertheless, it works like a charm, so I simply allow the tip of this bottle to clog after every use, and I simply burn away that clog when I'm ready to begin the next chipboard hardening session. Hardening every surface of the chipboard construction is extremely important. And the reason that it's important is because we need to stabilize and harden all of these pieces of lightweight chipboard until they become the consistency of hardwood. This is going to ensure that your miniatures, even though they are constructed from inexpensive and lightweight materials, will be able to withstand a lifetime of handling. The pieces will also have a density and a weight that is just not possible if you're working with, say, basswood, obèche, or balsa. For all of these reasons, I choose to work in this manner, creating the laminated and layered pieces that I do. I have an enormous amount of respect for miniature makers that work with fine hardwoods. It takes a level of skill that frankly I just don't have, but the Cricut Maker has revolutionized my approach to working with miniatures because it allows for the precision of design and cutting that frankly I just cannot attain fussy cutting things by hand. To me, it's a small price to pay to build up the layers and harden them in order to achieve the creation of pieces that previously I could only have dreamed about. And the only thing that's more fun than that is to get to share them with you. Once every single piece has been hardened with Superglue, it's time to begin the sanding and distressing process. Superglue hardening usually results in a slightly rough surface, and that's fine with me because I want to add additional character to my pieces anyway. I'm beginning by taking down the sharp corners along the exterior of the tabletop, and I'm using this extremely convenient nail drill to begin the process. But I also use conventional sanding materials and metal files, especially once I begin to distress the piece. Here I'm working on adding distressed wood grain, using a needle file that has a knife blade shape. And then I soften all of that work with an emery board. This procedure is repeated for each of the bench tops. The sanding drum attachment for the nail drill makes quick work of knocking down all those sharp edges. I like to rest the piece on a manky old sanding sponge to help stabilize it during this process. A variety of metal files are used to add faux wood graining and also to inflict more damage. After all, this table probably saw one or two banquets that got slightly out of hand over the centuries. I deepen these grooves using a heavy-duty metal file to really gouge away the material. And then I turn to a half-round file to make certain that the edges of the tabletop are less than perfect. I really want it to appear as though it has been used and worn for many, many decades. I add distressing to all of the pieces before beginning construction. And I will be using a combination of adhesives for this process. A good solvent-based adhesive like FabriTac is used to affix the beam on the bottom of each of the bench tops. At this point, I dab a little bit of FabriTac onto the end of the tongue of each of the stretcher bars, and then gently insert them into the construction slots on the vertical supports for each of the benches. This procedure is repeated at the other end of the stretchers, and the uprights are pressed into place Next, I solidify everything that has just been joined together using Pauper's Bondo. FabriTac and Superglue play very nicely together. I have no concerns about combining these two adhesives. It's been a tried and true method that I've used for years. So a little bit of FabriTac along the top of the uprights joins everything together. That's so cute. And then it will all get cemented into place using Pauper's Bondo. The exact same procedure is used to construct the trestle table. The beam is placed in the slots on the underside of the tabletop. The stretcher is inserted between the uprights, and at this point I use 1, 2, 3 blocks to hold everything in place while I apply Pauper's Bondo to these joins. The superglue cures immediately when it comes in contact with the baking soda. So this speeds up your construction time considerably. Although it will leave a slightly rough surface that you may wish to sand away once everything has been joined together. Now, more FabriTac is placed along the top of the upright supports, and they are fitted in place over the protruding beam. There. The piece is designed so that each of the benches can be placed entirely underneath the surface of the tabletop. Just repeat this construction method for the remaining bench using a combination of FabriTac, Superglue, and baking soda. At this stage, the piece is ready for whatever kind of finish you want to apply. I opted for layers of translucent color. I'm starting the process by darkening certain areas using a black wash created from a little bit of isopropyl alcohol with a few drops of black India ink added to it. This quick drying black wash is being applied to areas where a lot of damage has been added to the surface, and to emphasize areas on the piece that might have accumulated additional grime over time. Next, I'm going to be adding a warmer tone by using do-it-yourself coffee stain that has also had a couple of drops of black India ink mixed into it. This creates a dark, almost walnut stain, and it's a very inexpensive and easy to apply translucent stain for your wooden miniatures. Working in layers of translucent colors will result in a more believable and nuanced finish than if you were to simply apply layers of acrylic paint, or at least it does in my case, because I'm not that skilled an acrylic painter. At this point, I'm adding additional superglue over the top, fully intending to sand it back in areas to add a little bit of additional color. The superglue adds a shine and depth of finish that reminds me of ancient varnish. The precision applicator makes it really easy to apply superglue finishing to all of the fiddly bits. And once I've sanded everything back and exposed some of the lighter colors beneath, I add an additional warm honey tone. I just love that. It really does remind me of a typical finish on Jacobean furniture. And it's super, super sturdy. Yep, I'm going to be playing with these pieces for decades to come. Adding the distressing and the damage and the finishes is so satisfying. And if you choose to build it, I do hope that you'll share images with me. You can always send me an email or post them on the Thicketworks Facebook page. You'll find both my email address and a link to the Thicketworks Facebook page in the description. Designing and building these medieval miniatures in 1/12 scale has got to be one of the most satisfying creative journeys I've ever undertaken. Little by little, a tiny world from a forgotten time is being created. As always, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. And until next time, bye.